everybody to our Coaches Network for February, or for January, excuse me. It's very nice to see you all, and Happy New Year to all of you. And we're going to start off, we've got just a few announcements, and then we'll get started with our program. So I'll turn it over to Sandy and then a few others.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Happy New Year, everyone. Just a few reminders. We have a compulsory webinar, everything you've always wanted to know about compulsories, on January the 20th. You have to register for this event. And then the trials, US trials deadline is January 26th. Thank you, Thomas.
You bet.
And yeah, the coaches level 1 certification workshop is going to be on, we're going to have one on February 27th. It's a Sunday and it's about 5 hours. And if you register for it, there's also about an hour's worth of pre-work that you need to do prior to the workshop. So we're looking forward to that. We've had a lot of interest in it.
Thank you, Jackie. I'll pop in with one before I introduce tonight's program, and that is that the Board of Directors elections are upcoming. The first date to pay attention to is if you are a USTA member and you want to vote, you need to be a professional USTA member by January 15th. So if by chance you're on another membership, but you want to vote, you need to change to the professional membership in order to be eligible to vote. Second date to pay attention to is January 21st, excuse me. By that date, you'll need to fill out an intent to run, which is just a 1-page form, and send it in to me. And I will gather and collect them. And then Anna Dolan, who is our communications person, will work with the voting company to get our slates of candidates put forward and everything like that. And so after the 21st, we invite everyone to submit a resume and a headshot by a week or two later, and away we go. The voting takes place in late February and in early March. The USTA is a democratic organization. Membership and participation is important to us in that regard, and being able to respond to the voices through the Board of Directors. And so if you're at all interested in the Board of Directors, I urge you to consider it. If you have questions, Board of Directors are pretty easy to reach. I'll certainly put myself out there as gladly willing to talk with anyone who's interested in looking into it further. And I won't, and beyond that, I'll leave it up to you. But if there are any questions that can be answered in that regard, please let me know. Tonight's program is a great one. Last month, we had Jeanette Groom talking to us about multiple batons, and she's back with us again this month. But before Jeanette, Kathy Forsyth has agreed to join us tonight. And Kathy is going to be talking with us about roles and sharing with us some information about that. So Kathy will lead off, and then Jeanette will come in second, and she will talk about multiple batons, but she'll also include the aspect of roles in multiple batons. And then finally, for our last activity, we'll be doing a coaches roundtable and just sharing with one another on various questions. So without any further ado, let me present Kathy Forsyth. And as usual, questions in the chat box, please. And then we will monitor and go over them at the end. Welcome, Kathy, and thank you.
Well, roles are everyone's nemesis, I think. Coaches often don't like to teach them, and kids certainly don't always like to do them. So we're going to start out talking about a few concepts that are basic. Doesn't matter whether you're teaching a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced twirler. These are the important things that you need to remember. And if you can analyze a role with these basic premises, then you can teach any role, whether or not you can do it, because certainly we all have to teach roles that we've never done before, and roles continually seem to be invented, and then we really don't know what we're doing. So to start with, you would like to have your athletes have a baton that has a piece of contrasting tape in the very center, because the most important thing to remember about rolls is that they balance on your body. So this centerpiece of your baton shaft, they need to know where that piece of tape needs to be in relation to the part of their body they're rolling over. So if they're doing an elbow roll, the tape is in the in between part of their elbow. If they're doing a fishtail, the tape is on the back of their hand so their baton can balance. So when you first start to introduce rolls to beginners, what you want to do is just have them balance their baton on their finger, on their hand, on their arm, on their head, on their foot, just to kind of get the feel for how their baton balances, so that they're aware of that as they start to learn to roll. The next thing that's important is how and where they grip the baton. Where on the shaft do you have to hold the baton so that when you do the roll, this white piece of tape ends up in the right place? You know, when you do a fishtail, if you hold your baton in the very center, then when you start to roll, you're going to be off balance. So it's not going to balance very good. The other thing is that the grip has to be correct in order for the roll to be on pattern. And I cringe every time I see someone try to start a fishtail with their pointer finger up, because it puts the baton in the wrong part of their hand and it makes it difficult to roll it on pattern. Not only that, but when they start it, they have a big break. So in their roll section, now they stop dead, they put their hand wherever they're going to put it, and they start the roll. There's nothing that is worse choreographically than that. Pattern. Most every roll we do is vertical. A back neck roll can either be horizontal or it can be slightly oblique, but there's no oblique roll other than that I know of, other than the back neck roll. Even when you do a monster roll, your baton should be as flat as possible for that roll to be able to roll and be manipulated around your body. So when you start a roll, when you start to teach a roll, the preparation is extremely important. I almost always, I always will use a flourish, because I'm going to turn to the side a little so you can see. When you do a circle to start any kind of roll, that circle can be anywhere and it can be off pattern. You aren't usually going to do a flourish off pattern. Almost everyone is going to do it on pattern. So my go-to preparation for a roll is almost always a flourish. There are exceptions, but if you start the roll properly with the correct grip in the right place of the baton and on pattern, then the roll is going to be, the athlete is going to be more successful in the rolling skill. You also need to know where on the body the baton has to go. Is it, if you do an elbow roll, for instance, is the baton on the tip of the elbow? Is it back kind of on the bicep part of their arm? Or is it way back in their armpit? What's the proper place for that baton to roll? And of course, on an elbow roll, it's kind of halfway between the tip of the elbow and the shoulder. But they need to know that, because they have to be able to feel the roll touching their body in the right places. If they do, then rolls aren't going to hurt. And that's the biggest thing, that sometimes they hit hard and they hit them on their bone, and then they don't like them. They don't want to, they just don't want to do them anymore. Revolution is also important in rolls. A lot of rolls have loops. So if you do an elbow roll, it's a complete revolution over your body. If you do a fishtail and it balances on your hand, there's a loop that happens on each side of your hand as your baton rolls. So those loops are important. Oftentimes, especially in cutback rolls, athletes won't wait for the baton to start to do the loop, and then they can't make the roll work because they don't understand that there is a loop that happens there. Next, you should have a definite foot or body position for every roll that you do. First of all, so that they're aware of their body and they can make it look good. But weight distribution can make a roll work or not work. So, so you want to make sure that you make them aware of what that position is, whatever it is. Okay, the most important thing is that you use progression when teaching rolls. You wouldn't teach a fishtail before you taught a hand roll, because if you do, if you try to teach the fishtail without the basic hand roll being learned first, it's much harder. It's a lot easier to learn a word before you start reading a book. You know, you would never jump to that step without having the other things happen first. So your job will be easier if you know what the progression is, and you make sure that all the steps have been covered before you try to teach the next advanced level. The compulsories do an excellent job of teaching basic rolls. They put them in order. They always have a prep. They utilize the correct revolution, and they certainly aren't complete, because there are a lot more rolls that kids need to learn besides what are in the compulsories. But if you're a new coach, you should definitely look at that, because it will help you to determine what roles you teach in what order. All right, so I've been given a few roles to share my my secrets, I guess. And the first one is the fishtail. So the balance point on a fishtail should be in the center of the hand, in between the knuckles and the wrist. And, you know, back in the day, I learned to do my fishtails on this part of my wrist. So my hand was always like this. And, you know, it worked fine. But when you try to connect rolls, if you're on your wrist, it's really hard to make the next roll that you're going to connect to work. It's a lot easier if the athlete has their baton here, because then it will go into the next roll more easily. So as we've learned to teach rolls better, I think that some of the things we used to do, even though maybe we rolled pretty decently, now don't work as well, because we've developed rolls to a much higher level. Okay, so if I'm teaching this roll, I'm going to start with hand rolls, forward and reverse. And I'm going to start right here. And my baton, my grip, my white piece of tape is, I'm not holding it, because I want the center of my baton to roll over my hand. So I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to go this way. And I'm not going to catch it with the same hand. I might even drop it. I'm not going to drop it here, because it could be disaster. But you don't want them to focus on the catch, because they always will do that anyway. So let them drop it and make the focus be that the baton rolls in the right place with proper balance. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start this with going on each side of my body instead of being in the front. So if I'm facing the side, then my baton is going to roll in the back plane. And I'm going to face you so you can see this. When you roll this, do you see where my fingers are? They're kind of pointing to the back. And you can't do the roll with your baton parallel to your fingers. Your fingers have to be kind of perpendicular. And so now I'm going to have them go roll, dig, roll, dig, roll. Now you see this loop that's happening in between each hand roll. Well, when I get to now doing combining the two hand rolls, I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to make them balance their baton on their hand, and they're going to let the tip go down, and now they're going to let the ball go down, so that these loops are happening, and you can see it. It's kind of like rowing a boat almost. And they just are aware of that those loops are happening. And then you would start the fishtail, let them roll and move their hand. The more their hand moves, the more the chances that their baton's going to fall off. So you want to try to keep it within the shoulders, because that's going to be the biggest place that they're going to succeed. Okay. There's one other thing I forgot. I probably would also have them do a figure eight with no baton, because that's what a fishtail is. It's a figure eight on the back of their hand. And then I would have them open their hand and do that figure eight with their palm down, because this is the movement that their hand kind of makes. And they can't go from the shoulder. It's not just a shoulder thing. It's a little bit of a wrist thing as well. Okay. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat box. We're going to go on now to the double elbow roll. Oh, the double elbow roll. The thing that kids hate the worst is, hate the most, is having their baton be close to their face. And I don't like it either. So, I don't like things around my face. So when I teach the double elbow, I will first start by teaching the double hand roll like this. Wrist roll, there are paddles or any number of things that you can call them, because the movement of the baton is exactly the same as a double elbow. It's just rolling on their hand. It's a little easier to control, and it's far away from their face. Then we move up and we do it a little bit up by the wrist. And then you do it a little bit farther up on the arm, so that you're starting to get them to feel the baton closer to their shoulders and their face. And then you can move into doing the elbow. That's what I found has worked the best for me. Lost my train of thought for a second. Okay, so of course, in order to do a double elbow, you have to be able to do a single elbow on your left, and then a reverse elbow on the right elbow. The most important thing is that they make the elbow as small as possible. You see kids doing this and putting their hand over by their shoulder when they do an elbow roll, instead of putting it in the center of their throat, kind of. And then this is such a big space that their baton almost doesn't roll, because they're having to roll over too big a surface. Also, when you do the double elbow, if you start with your hand here, it's like, where do you put the other elbow? There's no room, because now when I try to get it to roll over this, there's no room for it to go. So you want to make sure that this part of their elbow is very small on both sides. Now, because they've learned to push their right hand into the double hand roll, it's a little bit easier to get the feel of sort of pushing a little to make that baton go over. And again, you really don't want them to catch. You just, you want them to think about the roll, where they start it, where the white piece of tape goes, and that it rolls over both elbows. Sometimes I will number their arms, or maybe put a sticker so that this would be 1 on my left elbow, my wrist would be 2, my other wrist would be 3, and my right arm would be up on my right bicep would be 4. And they have to make sure that their baton hits each one of those places, because sometimes they will roll and their baton will not do the loop in the middle. So they'll go from point 1 to point 4. And I think that visually it's easier for them to think about getting it to drop down by their wrist if they know that that's the second place it's supposed to go. And they need to know also that when they start it, they can't be like this. Their hand has to be right up where you're going to push it, so that they get the balance of their baton correctly. But you see a lot of kids that go like this and they can't get it over, so then they start throwing it. So if you make them touch their hand to their arm right here, I think it's easier to feel how the roll is supposed to start. Okay, I am done with the double elbow. Thomas, is there anything I need to address before I go on?
Sorry, Kathy, no questions thus far, but I do encourage you to ask them, everybody.
Okay, my next task was the elbow layout. And I usually teach this roll in an isolated form from a left-hand position. So I'm gonna start here, and I'm gonna do the roll over my right elbow. And at this point, you will have wanted to make sure that they know how to do an open arm roll right here, so that they can they feel the baton starting up and rolling down their arm into their hand. So those are the two things that they have to know right here. So when I teach this, I go like this. They start here, they push it over, they catch it. Then their arm goes out and they push it down their arm, so that there's a stop in between the elbow and the arm roll part of it. They can control it, and then they can make it work more easily. Then I make them go like this. Here's my friend Susan. Ta-da! So that they get the feel of putting this arm out with a little bit of a scoop, because the end of this is really almost like a fishtail up on their arm. So when they come here, now they push out and they roll and they push out. I don't ever teach this starting from a retraction roll first. And the reason is that often a retraction roll is off pattern when they do it. They're not totally vertical, so they don't have a great degree of success. But if I were going to teach it from a retraction roll, I would go like this. Start below the tape, roll over my hand and stop. Put the elbow forward, push it over, and then go into the arm roll. So there's three parts. There's the hand, there's the elbow, there's the arm. And then you start taking out the stops to make it happen. The biggest mistake that happens with an elbow layout is that they roll like this, and their baton is almost parallel to their arm or to their elbow. Instead of making sure that their elbow is here, the baton loops and they come out. So if their baton is touching this part of their elbow frequently, it means that they haven't done this, they've done this. And they like to keep that away from their face because no one likes to have their baton in that space. So make sure that they're getting perpendicular to their baton before they go out. And the more that they start with their elbow like this rather than this, the farther back they're going to have to reach to do the catch. It's just because where it rolls, everything kind of moves a little bit more in space. So here, really pointing towards the front and then opening out, and thinking that this loop has to happen on this part of their arm. So there's a loop that happens right here as they go out. Now, if they go like this with their elbow, then their baton's going to drop down, and instead of rolling out their arm, it's going to drop down into their hand. So making sure that this place where your baton is balancing as you open is level with your shoulder is really important. Okay.
Kathy, we have one, I think this is, can you explain double elbow layout?
Okay, well, double elbow layout is just like starting from here. It's just that when you get onto this elbow, now you have to lay out. And I wouldn't teach a layout roll from a double elbow first, because what you have to do with your hands, you have to let go, then you have to get your right elbow up, then you have to extend. So making those tasks happen quickly when you're just learning the roll, I think is hard. But if you can do it from here, if you can do elbow layout from here, then you can maybe do it from this position. The important thing again is that when it goes over the second elbow, the elbow can't be here. You've got to make sure that the elbow's pointing towards the front. Okay. Now, the last roll that I've been asked to address is the long arm roll. And I think I probably teach this different than a lot of people do. When I learned to do a long arm roll, starting like this and pushing it over your arm was not something that I ever learned to do in my entire, and I still don't do it well. I cannot start a long arm roll like this. And I don't teach it like that. I teach it from a reverse fishtail motion. So the first thing that they would need to know is how to do a reverse fishtail. Then when you do the reverse fishtail, your baton is on your hand. But the long arm roll is kind of the same thing. It just moves up your arm. And you can get your baton on your arm if you keep your arm relaxed. If I'm out like this, my baton's going to stay on my wrist. If I bend my arm, my baton can come up. So I would go reverse fishtail. Okay, now we're going to relax the arm. We're going to try to make it hit right here, lower than the elbow. And I'm going to have them go like this. And start the roll, turn a little to the back so that their arm is on this pattern over here and let it roll. Then I'm going to have them bend their arm a little bit more. And now we're going to try to have it hit above the elbow. So the basic movement of coming up their arm is happening before they ever have to go behind their head. A long arm roll is a lateral roll. It's not an oblique, doesn't go like this. It goes from side to side. And so you want them to have the feel of that. Okay, the next thing I would do, and I don't do this well, so is I would have it come from here, and now I would have them catch it behind their head so that they get used to the fact that this baton is supposed to make that little V in between their shoulders. Then they've already learned the long arm, the straight arm roll, we hope. So now I'm going to start with this old, we used to call them B rolls, and have it go behind and down their arm. So it goes like this, because that's the ending. And now they're controlling this part of it and letting it roll down their arm. When they've learned to do that, now you can put the parts together. One more thing. I use this a lot so that they do the roll and they catch it behind their back as something that they can do in more of a beginner, maybe high beginner rolling roll series. And they don't have to worry about getting it behind their head, but they can get it to go up their arm without any problem. The worst thing that you can do on a long arm roll is bend forward, because now the pattern is not vertical anymore, and it starts falling on your shoulder instead of going down your arm. The reason why I don't like to use this is because it doesn't connect to anything. So when you try to put a roll series together and you want them to go from, let's say, an elbow extension into a long arm roll, they can't do it as easily because they've just learned to do this. They haven't learned that reverse fishtail part. Roll series connect a lot using fishtails. So anything that you can make to be more like a fishtail is going to be easier to connect when you get to that point. Okay, that's all of my tasks. Any other questions?
We do have another question here, Kathy. Paige was asking about how your approach is to starting teaching Fujimis.
But I'm not going to let her answer that because we need to move on. And I'm hoping Kathy, are you going to be surprised by this? I'm hoping that you would consider coming back next month, Kathy, and giving us a second session.
Most definitely.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry to ask you that so publicly, but it was outstanding. You haven't had a chance to see the comments, but they reflect it. Any final comments or questions on any roles that Kathy did today? I'm just checking. Don't hesitate to unmute yourself, people. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. And as other questions come in, we'll have them available in the chat as well. So, and remember everyone, this is recorded, so you can come back to this and take a look. Last month, we began the multiple baton world with Jeanette Groom, and she talked with us a little bit about entering into beginning 2 and 3 baton, primarily 2 baton, and she's come back this month. And we just asked her if she would also include a little bit about roles in her presentation tonight in multiple batons, and Jeanette was agreeable to that as well. So thank you, Jeanette, and welcome.
You're very welcome. And actually, I've included a lot about roles in my 2 baton this evening, and I figured that that would be a nice flow from what Kathy was doing. I'd like to just talk a little bit about 2 baton roles initially, and then I'd like to demonstrate some. I'm a little nervous that Kathy is going to be evaluating my role technique, so I hope I do okay. So a little bit about 2 baton. When you coordinate a second baton and the athlete is trying to do a role correctly, it's difficult. No matter what they're incorporating with the role, whether it's something full hand or another role, it can very often sacrifice the technique of the role itself. So you want to make sure that the role is not being sacrificed and that the path of the role is still correct and the pattern of the role is still correct. So that's one of the first challenges. I think as a coach, it's easier for you and for the athlete if you choose to use roles in a 2 baton routine that are already proficient in the athlete. So they can relax more when they're doing the role, and they'll be able to concentrate on coordinating of the other baton. So, trying to learn a new role and coordinate it with another baton is much more difficult. So you'd like to kind of just use what they can do initially. Also experiment with doing the role in the right hand, doing the role in the left hand. Doing, maybe using the side planes and not just the front and the back planes. Doing the role forward and reverse direction. So if you experiment with all those different aspects, you'll come up with some combinations that might surprise you. And a lot of it's just kind of logical. Oh, I'm going to do it with the other hand. Oh, I'm going to do it in the other direction. Or what happens if I change direction? What happens if I change pattern? So those kinds of things are good as a coach to just play with. The other thing that I do a lot in 2 baton, not just with roles, but is to alternate the right hand and the left hand. This way you develop the left hand and you can begin to merge some of the skills. So you might, the skills might be more separate, and you might do something with one hand and then something with the other hand with a lot of full hand in between. But then eventually the full hand kind of comes out, and then you can go from right to left, and then you can begin to even overlap the skills. So I like alternating, catch right, toss left, just whatever it is, alternating right and left hands, I find helps to merge the batons eventually over time. So I've found that helpful. Also wanted to just mention a few progressions in roles in 2 baton. And these were some concepts I shared with the IBTF judges training. 4 different progressions. The first one, again, being separate skills, isolating the skill with the right hand, with the left hand, and just making sure that that's complete. Because the athlete will only be able to concentrate really on one specific role skill at a time. Then maybe moving to parallel skills where they do the same skill at the same time with both hands, like 2 fishtails together, for example. Sometimes that's much easier for the mind to figure out than simply alternating. So the next step would be doing contrasting skills, where you might do a fishtail with one hand and a finger twirl or a flip or something with the other hand, right? So you're requiring their brain to shift maybe from looking at the baton to feeling the baton. And I think in the role category, that's one of the other things that I try to train is their perception and how to switch from looking at the baton to feeling the baton to sensing the baton to timing. All those things come into, their success. And then the 4th progression, as I mentioned previously, was to overlap the skills. And I'll try to demonstrate that a little bit tonight, but bringing the skills closer and closer and closer and closer and closer together so that they can overlap a little bit. So that being said, I think I'm going to go into some demonstration. Are there any questions about anything so far? Okay, I will have to take a quick break and bring my cat downstairs so he doesn't get clobbered by the batons because he made an entrance. So I'll be right back. He wants to say hello.
Oh,
This is Stretch. So he says hello, but he has to go downstairs because he doesn't know what a baton is. So.
it's time for the pep parade.
Okay, so ready to begin with some basic skills, and many of them I took from what Kathy was going to be demonstrating. And we're going to start with hand rolls. And I think the best way to begin a hand roll is with the baton coming across the body, because the hand, as Kathy had mentioned, it's different when it's done to the side than when it's done to the front. So it's much easier forward and reverse hand rolls in the right hand and the left hand. Then you want to make sure that the thumb is out, right? Very often you see hand rolls being done over the thumb, and the thumb should be out, so it's done over the hand and not over the thumb. Then you can do the same thing to the side. Hand rolls to the front, forward and reverse. And of course, the orientation of the hand is different. It's a little, they have to get used to what that's going to be. So we do these to the side. Hand rolls forward and reverse, left hand and right hand. So they get used to that different orientation. And then you can, even doing that, you can start merging things. You just do do 1 repetition with the right, 1 repetition with the left, 1 repetition with the right, 1 repetition with the left. Right? And just train just the mind shifting from left to right. You're doing forward and reverse, and you're using 3 different planes. Okay, so from here, once they understand the hand roll forward and reverse, we can apply what we did last time, which is the full hand, you know, turning, this type of thing that we did last time. So they can do figure 8s, come down, double hand roll, come up, double hand roll. So they're still doing the same thing as we did last time. Figure 8s coming down, reverse figure 8s coming up, right? Figure 8 coming down, hand roll coming up. So you can practice that standard direction of twirl. And then also I would recommend turning to the right. So coming down, coming up, forward, down, reverse, up. Just like we did with the figure 8s. So that would be one of the first combinations that I would do with hand rolls. Then moving from hand rolls to fishtails, I use a half fishtail, figure 8. Right hand figure 8, half fishtail, figure 8. So you want to make sure, I think my fishtail is not in the proper place on my hand, but I also learned how to do it this way and not this way. Figure 8, half fishtail. Left hand, figure 8, half fishtail. And at this point, that's enough follow through, that they're doing the roll, they're doing right hand, they're doing left hand. But we have to do reverse, right? So we're going to do right hand reverse figure 8, placing the baton on back hand. And I totally agree with what Kathy had said. I always teach angel rolls or long arm rolls backhand because you have to be able to connect them. So I very much agree. And I'll start this one with the backhand, catch backhand, reverse figure 8, backhand, catch backhand. Same thing, left hand, reverse 8, backhand, catch backhand. So once they've learned both right and left, forward and reverse, you can then maybe do a little series, right? So you could do, even without the follow through, you could do right, left, right, left. Just so they start switching left, right, right, left, right, left, right? Without proper follow through necessarily. But then we can start a little series. Maybe we can do right, left, right, and then left, right, left. That would be a wonderful, maybe probably not beginner, but intermediate combination with half fishtails, starting through figure 8s. Actually, come back one step, forgot a step. You have to teach them the alternating, right? So even before that, you might teach parallel skills, right? Many athletes find it much simpler to do 2 half fishtails at the same time. It's easier than alternating and figuring out the timing. So figure 8, 2 half fishtails, and then following through. Even though, you know, this involves a lot of kind of awkward, a lot of flexibility in the shoulders, which is also good to train. So you have that, which they would do to the side. Okay, then you can also do reverse, right? Reverse figure eight, and it's good for them to practice it facing you so you can help them with their pattern. Try to get the hands as close together as possible. Backhand, this really develops a lot of good wrist flexibility because they can't, you know, they have to keep the batons parallel for them not to hit, right? So they can do that facing the right side, come down, reverse figure eight, facing the left side, and come up. So you can still follow that standard direction of twirl and come up. So from those parallel skills that we talked about before, now we have to train the alternating. And how I do this is just beginning with the right hand, half fishtail, figure eight. Half fishtail, figure eight. The left hand starts with the figure eight. Half fishtail, figure eight. Half fishtail. So if we start them together, the left hand starts with the figure eight and the right hand starts with the half fishtail. And they can stop. And now the left hand is going to go into the left fishtail and the right hand is going to follow through. So they have to keep switching which hand is doing the fishtail, which hand is doing the follow through. And I find that is much more complex than doing them together. Even though doing them together is a little awkward for the body, it's easier for the mind, I think. So now we would, of course, do the same thing with reverse. And on this one, I usually start with a flourish and a left hand reverse figure eight. Flourish, left hand reverse eight. So this would be reverse fishtail, reverse figure eight. Reverse fishtail, reverse figure eight, like we did before. So flourish, left hand reverse fish, right hand reverse figure eight. Right hand reverse fish, left hand follow through. So we're doing this. So once you have that alternating sequence in the mind, then you can start with creating a series, such as right, left, right, left, right, left. Flourish, right, left, right, left, right, left, and up. Okay, so that incorporates the half fishtails. And now let's look at layouts. Kathy had spoken about layouts as well. So once they know the layout in the right hand and the layout in the left hand, I usually teach them that way, facing the front, facing the back, in a standard direction of twirl, because it just reinforces that. You know, that there's a certain direction to the front and there's a certain direction to the back. And they don't have to know why they're facing the back right away, but you know why you're doing it and you know what you're leading to. So right layout, left layout, right layout, left layout. Okay. From there, we want to train the follow through. So this I find is a very good exercise in the speed of each baton, because the layout is going to be, this arm is going to be moving faster with that skill than the follow through. The follow through is very simple. It's just a reverse loop. And it slows, it takes a little bit less speed to coordinate with the layout. So you have reverse figure eight or reverse loop, layout, reverse figure eight or reverse loop layout. So all you're doing to keep the baton moving is actually lifting it up and around, right? Loop, up and around. And reflecting upon what we did last time, I think we did focus on figure eights to the right side with reverse flourishes. So you could go back to that drill to make sure they understand the flow, because that's exactly what you'd be doing. Wrist, elbow, loop, layout, loop. Okay. And then from there, you could add a fishtail. That's another half fishtail I tend to add in. So you do a layout, reverse loop, fishtail. Layout, reverse loop, fishtail. As long as the baton is moving and it's not stopping, it doesn't have to be looping and twirling all the time, but it just has to be continuing the flow, right? So layout, loop, half fishtail. Layout, loop, half fishtail. Another way you can use layouts would be if you were in opposition. It's a very nice way to do them, and they lend themselves easily to that, right? Opposition is something we like to see in Two-baton. And I was thinking, and I'll do another little series coming up, but from these layouts, we could go into elbow rocks and change direction. So if you have two figure eights and you do a right layout, left layout, right? And you keep that left hand doing a figure eight, the right hand can come to an elbow rock and change to a reverse figure eight. And then the left hand can come into a elbow rock and change to reverse figure eight. So now you have two reverse figure eights. So that's a nice way of showing right side, left side, and changing direction. So again, figure eights, layout right, layout left. Be sure that you continue the figure eight with the left hand. This is where it gets a little tricky. Continue that left hand while the right hand changes to reverse, and the left hand comes into elbow rock and then changes to reverse. So that was just, a little direction change. Okay. Any questions? I just have one little series left to show you. Any questions at all? No.
I'm looking to see, there's a lot of comments, Jeanette, but I don't think there are any questions. Jackie, do you see any? No.
Okay.
Go.
So let me just finish up, because I know you have things to do, with a quick little roll series that incorporates you alternating hands with, I don't know, 4 or 5 different rolls. Kind of a nice variety. So we'll begin with that half fishtail series that we did before, figure eight. So the right, left, right, reverse, left, right, left. And then we can go into a layout. And so that was the right hand layout. Then the left hand is going to slide to the end, come on underneath your elbow into an elbow extension. The right hand is still doing a figure eight, by the way. Then we can go, the left hand does a reverse figure eight. We can go into an elbow rock. So now we have 2 reverse figure eights. And then we're going to go into a double elbow with just passing the baton in the front. So in Two-baton, when you pass the baton, it's still moving the baton, right? It's still okay. So we have that double elbow roll, okay? That can also be, it could be a backhand flip as well. So again, we have, I'll just do this new part, layout, slide, elbow extension. So it's right hand, left hand, elbow rock, reverse figure eights, and this could either be a flip with a double elbow or a pass double elbow. Okay. So then of course, and I'll finish with this, you can reverse it. You should always have to reverse it, as difficult as it is, whether you use it or not, you're training the skills. So starting with a left layout, right hand would slide, extension roll, elbow rock left, and then you would pass and you would do double elbow in reverse. And I just wanted to say that when you do any kind of passing, so technically when I pass this baton, I could come down out of it. I could come up out of it. I could pass and come flat. So passing can really be a very helpful transition to planes or patterns or directions as well. So that's what I have for you tonight. I hope it was helpful.
Jeanette, thank you. And I'm just going to invite, I don't see any questions in the chat box. If you have a question for Jeanette, unmute your microphone and ask.
Jeanette, can you break down just real quick the elbow rock?
The elbow rock. Sure. Okay, so you have the retraction roll. And again, it has a lot to do with what Kathy was talking about, is being able to have the baton hit the elbow, not too close to the elbow and not too high up on the arm, but kind of right where the indentation is at the end of the deltoid muscle there. There's a little indentation. So having the baton hit there and being able to maybe tilt the elbow a little bit. So I think to do an elbow rock, the way I have been successful with it is to have the upper arm a little higher than the lower arm. And it helps the baton, it's like rolling downhill, right? It's hitting that space and then coming back down. If the elbow is this way, you're going to push it over. But if the elbow is down a little bit, the baton can kind of roll down that hill and come back. I hope that was helpful.
It was, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, everyone. Okay.